Hi, Dr. J. Welcome to Old Westbury. We're at NYIT today.
Thank you. It's very, very good to be here.
So you just came in from Manhattan?
Came in from Manhattan, spent some time, had some meetings with the job, and so it's good to be here. And it looks like we're on a basketball court.
Yeah. Why are we here on a basketball court?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, we're really excited to have you be our CISO ambassador and to be talking to our audience about our new program, our new series, which is called Full Court Press, where we talk all about defense and playing defense with cybersecurity.
Right. I mean, when you think about being a defensive player, like really in basketball, there are a lot of different ways that you can play defense. You can play man-to-man, you can play zone defense, and then there's the hack-a-Shaq that was always, very, very popular when Shaq was very active.
Are you a basketball fan?
Yes.
Dr. J?
So once I owned the Dr. J name, I have decided to be a student of basketball as well. So yes, I'm very, very much a basketball fan. And I try to, turn that into some cybersecurity strategies too.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that today, just to get the ball rolling, no pun intended. But when I watch basketball, I'm looking at these players all over the court, anticipating each other's moves, thinking what the other team is going to do next. They play defense and offense. I guess it's a little different with cybersecurity, though, because it's mostly a defensive game.
It is mostly a defensive game. Well, I don't know if I can really agree with that.
Okay.
Only because you have to play offense as well. So you have to have a hunting capability. And that hunting capability is the offensive side. So even though I think today's discussion, I really want to talk about the defensive side. That's the protective side. That's the preventive side. But there's the offensive side that says, hey, I have to be a hacker of my own system.
That's true. You kind of have to pen test and have a red team going and everything.
Right.
All right, well, tell me a little bit about cyber defense today.
So when I think about cyber defense, I'm thinking of there's so many different devices. There's so many different ways to look at it. I can look at it from a perimeter perspective. I can look at it from an endpoint perspective. I can look at it from a data security perspective. All of the different components, I have to make sure I'm defending, right? I'm defending the data on the network. And so, that's when I think back to my basketball, studies and analogies and things like that. I'm thinking of man-to-man. I'm thinking about zone defense. I'm thinking about lockdown defense. All of these different defensive strategies for those who are basketball fanatics, they know that these are different ways to defend the court, to defend the hoop, to defend the ball, right? If you think about it from a cybersecurity perspective, you can't just have one defensive strategy. You have to have many defensive strategies. You have to have man-to-man, which means you have to be able to look at each device and think, how am I going to defend each device? Then you have to think a zone defense layer as well. So zone defense is, I've got to defend this portion of the court. I've got to defend this portion of the network, and how am I going to defend this side or this group of devices? And then, I'm thinking of the hack-a-Shaq, or, it kind of, I want to say, or my belief, and through what I've kind of been watching, the lockdown defense kind of evolved into a hack-a-Shaq defense. And so that is me defending my endpoints. Right? I'm purposefully kind of creating a honeypot or something like that.
Like a trap, kind of?
Yes, a trap that's going to deter or make it more complicated for the adversary to get into my network. So you got all of these different defensive strategies that are coming into play.
So do people do that when they play basketball too?
Oh, sure. I mean, Bill Russell just had a birthday. He was like one of the biggest all-time, kind of defensive players. He was really known for the lockdown defensive strategy. In fact, he was like the first one who really conquered that theory or that method of play.
What about Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan
He's Steve Morgan's favorite.
I know. But if you think about Michael Jordan in terms of defense, you have to talk about Gary Payton. Gary Payton and Michael Jordan I want to make sure I have my titles right. They were both won this 9 times, all first defensive team. They're the only ones who've done that 9 times. They hold the record for it.
Defensive?
Defense.
Because I thought MJ was more like an offensive guy.
He is, but he was known, and I think that's what made him such a great player, is people looked at him from an offensive perspective and sometimes forgot about how great he was, how he was a beast in terms of defense. So he was able to play both sides of the court.
Right.
You know, Gary Payton, on the other hand, is the only point guard of record that has won Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh, wow.
So only point guard in that position, the only person in that position who's won that title. But he and Michael Jordan share 9 times the all-first defensive team of the year. So,
well, tell me a little bit more about cybersecurity and playing defense and how it relates to basketball.
So when I think about, and I'm going to go back to something I just said, Gary Payton being the only one point guard who's won Defensive Player of the Year. A lot of times our vendors try to be everything to everybody. You can't be everything to everybody. He's the only one who's ever done that, right? If that was popular across all, then more people would have done that. Our vendors and our community have to think about how we want to defend and using the right strategies to defend. And so there are multiple ways, to skin a cat, but we have to kind of think of this in a layered model as well. So I do want various overlapping, as much as my budget can handle, an overlapping defensive strategy. I want something that does well with endpoints and does well with my network devices that kind of overlaps, because if I have something else that's very, very good with network devices, then I'm overlapping things one on top of the other. I think it's a great strategy because it allows you to have a stopgap. If something keeps going,
Right, it fills in all the gaps.
It fills in all the gaps.
There's no empty space on the court.
If
so
for
to speak.
some odd reason something passes through that shouldn't have passed through, then at least I have another mechanism to stop it. Which is why we're talking defense. You have to have the offensive strategy because you always have to be looking, just like the adversary is always looking,
For the
right? They're always
vulnerability,
looking
yeah.
for a way in. We have to always be looking too. You know, when we think pen testing, we think something that's very planned and very methodical, and you've got a test plan, you've got results, you're looking for specific things. But sometimes our hunting capability needs to be a little more ad hoc than that. It has to be a little more unscripted.
Improvise a little bit.
Improvise, because
See what you can play with.
the adversary does not have a playbook. They're
true.
not
Just
looking
looking
at
for
the
whatever
test
they can get.
scripts,
Yeah.
you know. They're saying, how can I get in? Can I get in through your benefits system? Can I get in through your social media? Because you said something on social media that now keys me into what your secret words are, your
Right.
cover words are going to be. Is that something that I can now look at? So we have to not only look at the data that we have, but we have to look at the data that our
That
employees,
everyone has, sure.
that our employees are using, that our employees are putting out there.
Yeah, because they can pretend to be someone they're not. They use
can.
social engineering to trick you.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, full court press, we're going to keep talking to you about this and
Yes.
keep getting advice from you as our CISO ambassador to kind of give defensive strategy advice. All sorts of articles and interviews are going to be coming out about playing this game. Some people call cybersecurity a chess game.
It is. It's a chess game. It can be a Monopoly game when you think about how the adversary is buying our records on the dark web.
Oh, really?
It's definitely a basketball game. You have to be creative. You have to be creative in your cybersecurity strategy, just like you have to be creative in basketball.
Do you have like one story or example that you can share of how playing a good defense helped in your career?
So I remember my time at the White House is very dear to my heart. And our State of the Union is like the Super Bowl.
Right.
And so that is the time where you have the most attention. You have nation states looking to see the president's comments. You've got script kiddies kind of looking to watch and see how anyone is looking to see how they can either embarrass the administration, embarrass the president, embarrass the United States, anything like that.
Every little detail is.
Every little detail. And so our defense strategies had to fluctuate that. I was going to say that night, but actually it was like 48 hours before and 48 hours after, because it's a great time, a big time window that people are anticipating what he's going to say. Their attacks are based on their thoughts and their feelings. And then when you're watching the transcript, we would watch the transcript. watch him say, his speech, and see different pieces of the adversary attack the network. And we, of course, being in cybersecurity, you're familiar with IP addresses that, that are targeting certain areas. And so we had to make sure we had a layered defense strategy. But here's another thing, Georgia. It is actually a full court press. It is not half court. It is a full court press. You have to play the game the entire time. You have to be in it the entire time, because the first time that you're not in, the first time you lose focus on the ball, the first time you lose focus on your court, the other team is going to steal the ball.
All right. Thanks for coming down and chatting today.
Thank you.